If you've been in photography for a little while, whether you're new or whether you're an expert or maybe an enthusiast, a hobbyist, whatever kind of photographer you want to call yourself, you've probably heard of white balance before, right? And you probably don't know a whole heck of a lot about it because a lot of people don't, including myself, you know, when I first got involved in photography. And so I kept all my cameras on auto white balance because that was the easiest way to go. But there is a better solution, a more accurate solution. And that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode of Camera Talk. So let's get to it.
Here I am, Vietnam. Rain is always coming down.
This is Camera Talk with Dr. Scott. Okay, this week's episode, we're going to get a little off, you know, cameras and lenses and whatnot, and get into a little more of the inner workings of your camera. And I'm going to pick a particular subject this week, which you may have probably heard about before, and it's called white balance. And you may or may not really know what it's all about. You know, there's plenty of experts out there who aren't really clear as to how to use white balance to their benefit. And there's plenty of beginners who don't know anything at all about it. And therefore, just like myself, I found the easiest way to go is let the camera make the decisions for you and put it on auto white balance. Now, there's a lot of cameras out there that do a pretty good job with it. You know, my Sony a7R II does pretty good. My Leica M10 does pretty good. But some of, you know, previous models that I'd been using, like the M9, for example, and speaking of Leica, that I have up here, the white balance wasn't all that great. So doing it manually, setting it manually was definitely the better way to go. Now with today's software solutions out there with Lightrooms and Luminars, which I use myself, you know, there's a lot of options you can do inside that software to tweak the white balance and whatnot. But if you could do it in camera and, you know, have this all set for you before you begin shooting, then it eliminates the necessity to go into software and try and, you know, salvage whatever colors you can out of it. Because first of all, I want to, you know, clear something up as a definition so that, you know, you understand what white balance is. You know, it really comes down to, even though it's called white balance, it really comes down to colors. And when it comes down to colors, it's actually coming down to, when we look at colors, we actually refer to it in terms of temperature. You know, just like, you know, the temperature of the room sort of thing. It's based upon the light. And that's measured in Kelvin. You know, you've heard of Fahrenheit, you've heard of Celsius, you may or may not have heard of Kelvin. But the Kelvin scale is what's used to measure colors. And the problem is, again, out there in the photography world, there's a lot of misinformation that goes back and forth. And many people get confused with white balance as being related to exposure. And exposure is not the same thing. You know, exposure has to do with light, you know, versus white balance, which has to do with color. So those are, you know, if you want to put it in simplistic terms, those are the ways to differentiate them. So one way to set your camera manually, set the white balance so that you're capturing true colors in their natural sense, is through using a white balance card. I have a small one here, which is great because it, you know, you can attach it somewhere. You can put it in your pocket, keep it in your bag with you. And this is called a white balance card. So it's called a YBAL. You know, you can look this up on Amazon or eBay, or, you know, you can probably buy it at your local camera store, whatnot. But what it is a certified neutral gray. You know, and it comes certified. They have, you know, they have a certification that says this is a neutral gray. Versus others out there, if you go on Amazon or whatnot, you'll see something advertised like this. And they're advertising them as a white balance card, but it's not true. This is a gray card, and you can see if I put them, you know, side by side here, you know, you can see the two different shades. You know, this one's obviously a very light gray, whereas in this one is a gray. It's actually 18% gray is Kodak. 18% is what this is for. Now this is for exposure. This one is for white balance, and they're two different things. But again, if you go on the internet and you search for white balance cards, you'll see these advertised quite a bit. And they're just trying to basically get your money however they can. But just be aware that a true white balance card is not gray like that. It's a very light gray. And so, of course, getting a certified one is definitely the way to go. You know, obviously throughout this video, I'll be slipping in some photos for you to see what they look like up close. So, you know, how you use an you know, the actual gray card itself is similar to a white card. You know, you put your gray card in front of your subject, and you use your light meter in your camera to, you know, if it's, you know, to the left or to the right, you know, you tweak it until it gets to 0 based upon the gray card and the available light that's illuminating your subject, and that's how you're getting the correct exposure for your metering.
A photographic gray card is always 18% gray, regardless of the lighting situation you're in. So what you want to do is put that gray card in the same lighting situation that you're shooting. To get your exposure, you don't actually have to take a picture of it, but fill the frame with the gray color and press your shutter button down halfway to activate the camera's meter. If you can't fill the entire frame, use the center weighted or spot meter setting so it only reads the middle of the frame where it's all gray. Now, using manual exposure, adjust your settings until the arrow in your meter is dead center. That's middle gray, so now you can put down the card and shoot away.
Versus the white balance card, what you're interested in here is capturing the natural colors. And so the way to do so is in your camera itself. Like if I use my Leica here as an example, you know, I turn it on and I go into my menu in white balance, just like most cameras, and I'm sure you can't see that from here, but I'll put up a you know, a close-up screen so you can see. But it starts with auto white balance, and then goes daylight, cloudy, shadow, tungsten, fluorescent, fluorescent cool, flash, you know, other options they have down here. They have gray card, which I'll talk about in a second with that, and color temperature, where you can actually go into a Kelvin scale, and the Kelvin scale will range from 11,000 and goes as high as 5.7, where we are here, all the way up to 13,100. To get my glasses checked. Oh crap, I don't wear glasses. Well, I'm supposed to though. That's why I can't see anything. So anyway, and so I'll show you this in pictures. But what you want to do is go into actual in Leica anyway. In the Sony here, it's a little different. But anyway, all cameras, at least all digital cameras, allow you to do this: is change your white balance from auto white balance to a custom balance. So, gray card. What it's going to ask you to do is take a picture of the white balance. So in this case, I would basically just put my, you know, if I'm going to be taking a picture of a subject in this direction, I put the card in front of the camera, take a picture. And again, you can't see this from your angle where you are, but I'll clip in a little video of how this works up close. But basically, there's a little cross that you can arrow down into the center there, and you hit enter, and at that point it asks you to save it, and then when you save it, white balance is set, it's called. So now whenever I take a picture of something in this direction, I look at the board, zero in, focus it, and voila. I have a photo that is white balance correct. The colors in the room are captured in their natural state. So again, that's the Leica, and of course a lot of you out there don't have a Leica, so but it's just as an example of what this is.
And usually the camera will then, depending on the camera, it will ask you to take a photo of white piece of paper or a gray card or something like that. And a gray card is like this one. This is a white balance card, and the point with this one is that it's neutral color. So what I would do is, if I want to take a photo of this over here, I would hold the white balance card in front of it, and I'll just set the camera to the closest focus. It doesn't have to be in focus, I just have to see the card on it. Then I'll take a picture. And then I can see here I have the white balance card. In this case, with this camera, the Leica M240, I would have to scroll down. So I have a cursor here onto the white balance card, and then I press set, and then the camera will say white balance is set. So what camera just did was that it read the light on this neutral color card or gray card and said, okay, there's so much blue light in, there's so much orange tones, and now I'm just going to calibrate so it becomes neutral, and that means white.
But I can do the same thing on my Sony. I can go into the menu. Well, first I have to turn it on. Go into my menu. Go to in the first grouping on page 5. We have what's called white balance, and of course you hit the center. You go in. I clicked too quickly, so I go in, and same thing on the. Now, of course, the menu is different between the cameras, but they all follow the same logic. You can go all the way to the top where it's AWB for auto white balance, which is where most people have their white balance, and you go through daylight, shade, cloudy, fluorescent, incandescent, fluorescent, daylight, fluorescent, flash, underwater auto. So this one has what Leicas don't have. Kelvin temperatures, you can go in again, and then you can do custom. And custom setup is where you want to be using your card. So same thing, enter to select. You enter the center button on the wheel. Presses to capture the scene, and same thing. You want to set this in front of the lens, and so same thing. I capture, voila. It does the same thing. It takes the picture, and I look to select, and it registers.
That's the fact, Jack!
And I hit my enter button again, and now I'm set. So if I take a picture, this is that was a 35 millimeter on here. This is a 55, so I get a closer setting here. But if I look at that picture now, again, I'm looking at some accurate colors from the scene here.
If we just go above the auto white balance, we'll see that we have a set menu where we can record a very precise white balance of a neutral tone that we put in front of the camera lens. You can purchase these neutral tones such as a white balance or a reference card. Then all you need to do is press the center button in order to take an image of the neutral tone that's in that center circle that's appearing in the viewfinder. Once you've done that, it'll create a custom white balance, and then you'll be invited to assign it to one of 3 registers.
So again, you know, that's the whole gist of this video, is to teach you, you know, the importance of using a manual white balance setting on your camera. So again, just to capture those natural colors, the ones that are going to play tricks with auto white balance are the warm yellows and oranges of daylight versus the blues of the afternoon, or in the shadows or shade, because sometimes auto white balance can become confused by the light. You know, it might be shifting, you know, clouds might be passing by, and so again, the auto white balance isn't quite sure how it's seeing the colors. So it makes adjustments, and sometimes it'll miscast the blues and the oranges and greens in particular, and you end up with some pretty wild colors. Now I took some photos in the garden last week of my wife and my son Dylan, and I left the auto white balance on, and took some pictures, and it was you know, later afternoon, and when I took a look at the in-camera results, they were very yellow, you know, very bright yellow and green, as if the sun were just beating down on my wife and son, which was not true. The sun had already passed behind the buildings behind us, so there was no direct sunlight, but the light was just reflecting off buildings and whatnot and coming back at it, so it looked like those were the colors. So just to show how much of a difference that made, you know, I took away the color cast from the photos, and I'll, you know, show you this right now. We show you before and after, you know, when I get rid of that color cast, to see some of the natural colors that come out. Aww. Aww. And so again, those types of situations will play tricks on your auto white balance, and same with fluorescent lights or artificial lights. Sometimes they have a green magenta shift that'll, you know, again, play hazards on natural colors. You know, all the experts out there, all the pro photographers and whatever, they get to know, you know, they memorize their Kelvin scales, which is, like I said, is a, you know, a temperature scale. And they understand the temperature of the light that they're seeing, the light that they're surrounded by, and they set their white balance to a specific Kelvin setting. And you know, again, if you memorize just a couple of them, you can kind of guess at what Kelvin setting you should be photographing at, and it'll make a world of difference to you. You know, you'll because sometimes even in, you know, Lightroom or in Photoshop or you know, Luminar or any of these other Capture One and so forth, you know, they'll do the software will do the best it can to, you know, change the colors. Now, of course, this is in RAW. You know, if you shoot RAW files as opposed to JPEGs, JPEGs are a little more difficult to tweak, but your RAW files are much more easier to manipulate and toy with the colors and whatnot. But again, if you're capturing the colors as they are straight out of the camera, then it makes the software's job a lot easier. So you know, as I said throughout the video, you know, I've tossed in some examples of these of the uses and the differences between all the various settings in your white balance. So hopefully that opened your eyes a little bit to it. And you know, believe me, there's a lot more to it than what I could tell you. There's other experts out there on YouTube who could probably enlighten you further into how white balance works and how to use it best in your particular camera. So well, that's pretty much all I have for you this week. It's a as usual, you know, I'd like you to give me a thumbs up, so I could give you the thumbs up, girls. And I'd like you to please subscribe, help my channel out. Subscribe, do me a favor, and please subscribe. And you know, if you're looking for any software deals, as I said, I use Luminar, so therefore I've got a link down below where you can save yourself some money. Luminar's got some great stuff now. They give Lightroom and Photoshop a run for their money, but they're also cheaper than those programs. And once you buy them, they're yours for life. There are no monthly fees. There's no renewal payments or anything like that. So it's like $57 or $67 or something right now. If you click below, you save $10. So you get it even cheaper. I make a little bit off of that too. Yay, everybody likes to make money. You know, from there, you know, use the software. I mean, if you're just taking snapshots, that's great. You're just uploading to Instagram or whatever, just use what's in your camera.
I don't care.
But if that is the case and you're not using software, then you really do want something like this. You want your white balance to be spot on, so that you can just straight upload right out of your camera into Instagram or Facebook or whatnot. But if you are using software, then, you know, again, a great choice is Luminar, and they have a new version called Luminar AI for artificial intelligence, which makes some really great decisions for you to speed up your processes. So anyway, that's all I have for you. Thanks for dropping by. This was Modesty Photography. You know, we're here to help try and save you some money, maybe teach you a thing or two you may or may not have known before, and you know, help build our community. So get the word out there, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week. And today's actually New Year's Eve, even though this comes out a few weeks later, but I'm filming this on New Year's Eve. It's what time is it? Yeah, let's see how close we are to New Year's Eve. Ooh, it's 11:10. So 50 more minutes till 2021. Ooh, get rid of 2020. So stay safe, stay COVID free, wear your mask.
Would you like to see my mask?
Social distancing. Follow all those rules, and you're more than likely not to get this nasty virus. So anyway, have yourself a great week. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you in the next episode of Camera Talk with Dr. Scott. All right, take care.
Here I am.